Alright, today I'm going to be doing a reaction to this video called Ouch! Joe Rogan proves if Matt Walsh is talking, he's lying, which was uploaded by TYT. So far I've only seen a little bit of this video, so I don't know how much of it I'm going to actually want to include in my commentary. But to give you some context, it says, Matt Walsh and Joe Rogan go on unhinged transphobic rant. So let's have a look at that.
Well, it's always been a psychological condition.
I presume here that he's referring either to the condition of being trans or the condition of gender dysphoria, which is, of course, common amongst trans people prior to having it adequately treated.
It's always been known as being like a psychiatric condition, like it's a mental health issue.
Yeah, so a lot of people seem to be of the understanding that that means that people who are trans are just, like, delusional. They think they're some sex other than what they are, when in actuality it's more like this.
You're dysphoric, you're sad or upset about your gender. You feel that the person you were born, so I was born a girl, is incongruent with how I feel about myself. I feel like I'm a boy.
It turns out that the precursor genitals transform into either female or male during the first trimester of pregnancy. The precursor brains, on the other hand, transform into female or male during the second trimester of pregnancy. So the current working model is that a unique mix in my mom's womb caused the precursor genitals to transform one way, but the precursor brains to transform the other way.
And this does happen. If those little gonads don't produce enough testosterone, so there isn't enough to get into the brain and thereby be converted within certain groups of neurons into estradiol, that male will develop a female brain.
Transgender is not a mental disorder, disease. It doesn't have a diagnosis.
So a trans person's gender dysphoria is only a mental health issue in a way similar to how depression is a mental health issue. Neither imply that the person is delusional or thinking that they are someone that they are not. If they feel that they are a woman trapped in a man's body or vice versa, well, the empirical data actually corroborates that perspective. They're not delusional.
Right. And now it's being accepted as a gender identity issue, where it was always just like a weird kink that people had.
Well, here he sounds like he's confusing transgender with transvestite.
A transvestite is not a transgender. And transvestite or transvestism, which is called in the DSM, is something totally different, which is someone who gets sexual arousal out of dressing like the opposite sex. So that is like a whole nother thing. It has nothing to do with gender dysphoria disorder.
Okay, so as you're going to see here in their nonsense conversation back and forth, backed up by no facts at all, they're going to keep calling it different things, a psychological illness if you're trans, and at the same time, a kink, a fetish, right? The only thing they don't call it is just what people actually are, right? And Rogan goes in that direction near the end, but it makes no sense because he already labeled them the other two things. So I want to give you another clip here that has Matt Walsh in it. Watch.
In general, like there are different categories of people who transition. And we kind of talk about them like they're all the same, but they're not.
I'm going to speed this
and
up.
You can
kind of break it down by age. Like there's the very young children, a 5-year-old, and we hear that, oh, my 5-year-old is trans. That's 1,000% the parent just deciding they're going to do that to the child, because no child is going to.
No, that's not 1,000% just the parent deciding that. Matt Walsh either doesn't know what he's talking about or is just blatantly lying.
No child even knows what that is, so you have to suggest that to them. Then you have.
They might not be familiar with the word trans, but with trans people, we have stories like, well, you know, when I was a little kid, I said something to my parents along the lines of, when is my penis gonna fall off? I'm a girl. I'm not supposed to have a penis, right? This is like with the actress Nicole Maines. She was born with a male phenotype, so she was gendered as a boy, but then at some point starts trying to correct her parents, explaining to them, no, I'm actually a girl. Parents tend to actually be pretty resistant to this kind of thing, when kids start, saying this, and they have to talk to doctors and specialists or whatever to get better educated on what's happening to their kid. And so really it's medical professionals who wind up, telling them in the long run, look, it looks like you got a kid that's trans here.
You have the adolescent girls, and Abigail Schreier's written about this in her great book. And that's the social contagion. They pick it up from society. But then there's the older men who are adults and decide one day that they're women. And for so many of them, this is a fetish.
Yeah, so everything is about trans folks is illegitimate. And so, of course, with Matt Walsh, almost everything you hear is a lie.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you've got these 5-year-olds that are saying they're trans. Really? Show me one. I've never heard of it. I've never seen it. There's never been a news event about it. He's just pretending that they're doing that. Okay. Later, he's going to get busted on a massive lie in the middle of the show. It's going to be awesome. We'll get to that in a second, too. But, guys, just to debunk what Joe Rogan said. Yes, in the old medical handbooks from a million years ago, they used to call being not only trans, but being gay as a mental illness. They would describe it that way. But in old medical textbooks...
Yeah, this is something Robert Sapolsky talks about in his lecture on the neurobiology of transsexuality.
They also said Jews have larger heads or craniums or something, and that's why they were terrible, etc. You know why they fixed it? Because it was wrong.
Yeah,
that's why they fixed it.
That's how scientific methodology works, guys. You know, when new evidence comes along, you have to update the narrative that you put forward. You have to update it in accord with the actual evidence that is actually available to us. You don't keep perpetuating the myth.
Said that in decades and decades and decades, because they actually did science and figured out what was real and not real. But these guys want to go backwards to more hatred.
I do have a pretty big head for the record, but that's not all Jews. It just happens to be my head.
Well, to be fair to that. Okay. So I want to get to how he got busted in a second, but I want to let you guys weigh in on this so far.
Yeah, I think the thing about like this is whenever I hear about any of these people talking about the trans community or the LGBT community more broadly, it's just these people's definition or sense of masculinity is so fragile that if everybody else doesn't comport to exactly how they view the world, like in their worldview, it's apparently completely illegitimate. Like you would think that if these people who are purported like self-proclaimed alphas, right? Don't tread on me. These are the alphas. These guys, these are like the real guys. If they were in any way like comfortable or confident in their own skin or in who they are, they would just shut up about all this stuff.
That's
and,
true.
Like, instead, they have to like litigate how everybody in the whole world lives, and if it doesn't comport exactly to their specific worldview, then it's wrong, and they have to go on a podcast and talk about it all day long. You know?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. And that's what I've been saying from day one. Why do you guys care?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? Why are you so weirdly insecure?
So, yeah, like what they've said in the past of this situation when asked, like, you know, why do you care? And they say, well, I care about the truth. It's just like, no, you don't. It's like, no, you don't. You're not even speaking the truth. What you're speaking is demonstrably false. You are definitely wrong. But anyway.
I mean, there's not a lot of trans folks in the country to begin with. Right? They think it's like the world's biggest issue. And in a sense, it is a huge issue for them.
Yeah.
And that makes you go,
yeah.
Why is it that big a deal for you? Because it isn't really that big a deal for anyone else. Yeah. And you know, they betray themselves all the time. You remember when... Look,
I used to be, you know, somewhat transphobic. Like when I came across... you know, the trans people or the concept of a trans person, you know, I thought, you know, either these are people who are, you know, delusional, they think they're something that they're not, or they, you know, there's like men pretending to be women, you know, just, you know, being like deceptive or whatever. And I had a negative feeling towards that. And, you know, the trans, or well, I guess we'll just call it gender affirming care. Like, oh, you know, these people are, you know, getting their genitals butchered, you know, mutilating their penises and turning it into something other than what it is. Like, oh, that's so tragic and all that, right? But then I just got better educated on the stuff. But my point here is, you know, before I got, you know, better educated on, back when I was, you know, somewhat transphobic, I wasn't so transphobic that I came online and, you know, was like raging against the trans community and, you know, all these doctors doing this gender affirming care. Like the fact that there are so many people like so absorbed in this and just like, oh, we got to stop this trans movement. Oh, this is just such a bad thing. It's just like, dude, why do you fucking care so much? Like, this is really bizarre. Like, even back when I was transphobic, I didn't care this much. Like, what the fuck? It's just like, it was something that kind of bothered me. I didn't have any reason to go, like, campaign against it or anything like that.
Brian.
I think, honestly, it's going to go away, this issue from the right. It's what the right focuses on so much. And the reason is that they want to focus on like one or two instances and try to make them as if, extrapolate them as if they're some issue that's plaguing the entire country. And it's just to scare people, right? Like, it's just regular fear mongering so that, voters will watch this and think, oh, if we elect Democrats, it's going to turn our kids into trans people. Like, it's going to, it's like, we've heard this a million times. But I think what we've seen in this election and what we've seen for the last few elections is like the lunacy surrounding these culture wars and conspiracy theories is becoming less and less resonant with people who are actually showing up to vote. And it's going to become even less resonant as young people continue to make up a bigger part of the voting population, because they see through all this shit. You're not going to be able to tell like a 19-year-old that there are litter boxes in school bathrooms or that everyone is turning trans, because these people are in school and they're with young people all day long. So they know it's all bullshit. This is solely focused on scaring old people who don't know any better and who believe anything. But as the younger generation continues to move up, they're going to see this. They're going to see like how like oozing in bad faith this is, and they're going to think that these people are clowns, and they're going to abandon the party writ large just because these people are trying to win some desperate culture war by appealing to a shrinking faction of very gullible, very old people who make up the Republican base.
And that's exactly why you have Jesse Waters then, right on the night of the election, or the next night going on television and saying, there was a huge number of young people that voted in this election. This is a very big problem for the Republican Party. Just saying it out loud.
100%. All right, listen, we got to give you more clips, including the ones I promised you. So we're fair. So there is a difference between Matt Walsh and Joe Rogan. And the fact check that Bus Walsh is the biggest difference. But here, Rogan tries to temper what he's saying. Let's watch.
It's so Handmaid's Tale. It's so wild that people are just wholesale adopting this. And this is not to deny that there's people that are trans. I've met people that are trans. It exists in nature. I mean, guys will shoot a buck and they'll find out that it's actually a female with antlers. Nature's weird, right? I think nature does put people, make humans for whatever reason that really feel like they should have been born a female or should have been born a male. But that's not all of what's happening. And in our desire to be compassionate and to have care for these people and to love these people and respect these people, we're opening the door to all this chaos.
Wait, first of all, you don't sound that compassionate. So, second of all, what chaos?
Yeah, that's a good question. While it's true that we on rare occasions have like a misdiagnosis or a detransition or whatever, I don't necessarily think of that as chaos. It's unfortunate, but I wouldn't go as far as to call it chaos. But I also don't know that that's what he's talking about when he says it's chaos. I would want to hear his specifics. Like, what is it he specifically has in mind that he's thinking of as part of the chaos, or as, what all is going into the chaos? I just want to hear him out. I just don't know what he has on his mind is all.
Like, let's say that someone is, like, at least Rogan has two categories. So Matt Walsh only has one category. We hate them. They're awful. They don't exist. They're making it up. They're mentally ill. Rogan's like,
well, to be fair, Matt Walsh has expressed concern about, gender-affirming care, like, butchering the genitals of children or something like that. So there is that approach among the other approaches that Cenk just mentioned. But of course, this raises the question, is genital mutilation even a standard practice in the gender-affirming care of children? And my understanding is that it isn't. I'm not saying genital mutilation of children doesn't happen, but the only circumstances I'm aware of where it has happened don't even have anything to do with affirming a child's stated gender identity, like with circumcision, for example. That's not about affirming a child's stated gender identity.
Half of them are that, and half of them are real. But the other half that you think aren't real, what chaos? Like, what? So let's say that someone is not really, this is Rogan's mindset, not really trans, but pretending to be trans. How did that create chaos in my life? It's the same either way. What difference does it make? Oh, no, we caught you. You're not really trans. You're pretending to be trans. And?
Right.
Right? Like, it's not true. It doesn't make sense. But it also doesn't matter. But I want to get to the better clip here because here comes Matt Walsh.
Wait, but before you play this, I just got to make one point. Of course, you got to leave it to Joe Rogan to only understand something and have compassion for trans people, understanding it through a hunting analogy of killing bucks in the wild. Then he gets it. Oh, something I killed could be trans. Then maybe it's like such a weird thing.
Okay, so Matt Walsh is going to make something up here, and then we're going to have a wonderfully humiliating situation. Let's watch.
How many people have had this done?
Depends on what. I don't think we have exact numbers, but it's if we're talking about the drugs, it's. I mean,
I'm mystified as to why Rogan is asking this of Matt Walsh. Like he's some kind of fucking expert on this. Like what?
Millions.
Are you talking about hormone blockers?
Yeah,
Millions of kids have been on hormone blockers. Really?
I'm sure someone's going to fact check me on that, but my guess is that we're into the millions now at this point. Yeah, that would be my guess.
It says over the last 5 years, there were at least 4,780 adolescents who started puberty blockers and had a prior gender dysphoria diagnosis.
It says it's kind of undercounted, but that
would be a big undercounting.
Less than 1,000 people a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess, hundreds of thousands at this, but I could be wrong.
Million sounds great.
Yeah, I could be wrong.
Yeah.
The Media Matters will have fun with that clip.
Yeah, we are going to have fun with that clip. I could be wrong. Yeah, that's because you made it up.
Yeah.
I love how he's off by about 995,000. And so instead of just accepting reality, like accepting objective reality that there were just a few thousand, he deigns to allow that number to come down to hundreds of thousands. Like he's still off by hundreds of thousands because the number is still only 4,000. We have the number right there.
And I think the producer clarified that was over a number of years. So it's about 1,000 a year as opposed to millions. Okay. By the way, Matt Walsh very lies pathologically about the kids that are getting gender changing surgery. That number is actually 0. Okay. If you're underage, you cannot get that surgery. So it's like, oh, they're doing it to all the kids. They're butchering the kids. Right. And then the gender blocking things, that's happening to millions. It's to why? Because if he told you it's happening to 0 kids or 1,000 kids across a country of 330 million people, you might realize, wait, even if I care about this issue, doesn't that seem like a tiny, tiny issue? Why are we spending like 50% of our time talking about it?
And they make it not only a big issue, but a very dangerous issue. He goes and says that, and then people go and attack children's hospitals that they believe are performing these procedures on kids that they are not doing. I mean,
100%. And it's super dangerous. We did that story before. Look, I'm not in the camp of your ideas are dangerous or your speech is dangerous because I didn't like it, right? I don't agree with your policy points, so it's dangerous. No, he's literally saying this particular hospital is butchering kids. Aren't you going to do something about it? And then people do something about it. They call in bomb threats. They threaten the hospital.
That's inciting violence. That is not free speech. That is straight up dangerous.
Yeah, and so he's a despicable character. But one funny thing about this, though, is that when he's on his own and he's making his nonsense videos and movies, he's tough guy. And he's like, oh, the trans people are the worst. They're butchering people. He's on Rogan's show. He's like, could be true, could be false. Because Rogan's calling him out on it, and he can't disagree with Rogan because that's a cardinal sin. So all of a sudden, the tough guy's like, oh, yeah, maybe I was wrong. Interesting. Look at that. They never get called out. And even there, Rogan, who agrees with him like on 80% of the stuff when he calls him out, he's like, you know why? Because he was lying. He was always lying. That's who Matt Walsh is. Oh, if Matt Walsh is talking, he's lying.
Alrighty, well, I did cut out certain seemingly less important parts to keep it from dragging on too much, but I mostly liked that video. TYT can be pretty entertaining. But anyway, please remember to thumb up the video if you liked it, and leave a comment if you have something you want to say. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.